Cross, and she's going to talk to us about the importance of voting. If you give her a round of applause for me, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Toni Cross. I'm a Black woman who was born and raised in Juliota, and I'm here to tell you that las vidas negras importan. La vie noire compte. Black lives matter. Even though George Floyd was the spark, we're not just here for him. We're here to affirm that all Black lives matter. Be they Black women like Breonna Taylor and Sandra Bland, or Black trans people like Toni McDade and Nina Pop, or Black people with disabilities like Philip Coleman and Charlena Lyles. All Black lives matter. Now, I'm sure that most of us here today know at least one person who doesn't understand why it's offensive to say that all lives matter. And to personalize an analogy that's gotten a lot of use in the past couple of weeks, you guys remember that fire over at the Park Place Apartments right over there that took place a couple weeks ago? When that fire was raging and the fire department was spraying those houses with water, trying to control the burn, trying to save people, trying to save property, you didn't hear people who live in Live Oak saying, "What about us? Come spray our houses with water too," because their houses weren't on fire. They weren't in danger. We know that all lives should matter, but right now, Black people in the U.S. are in crisis, so we're asking our fellow Americans to help us out in our time of need. We're not saying that only Black lives matter. Like the pastor said, we're saying that Black lives matter too. Now, although we're in uncharted territory, we know that the problems facing our country did not start with the murder of George Floyd, and they didn't start with the election of the man who's currently in the White House. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, America has given Black people a bad check. America has been gaslighting us, telling us that all men are created equal and that all lives matter, while refusing to take its foot off of our necks. And these issues aren't new. They started in 1619 and they continue to this day. Now, I understand why this history, coupled with the fact that the general election is 5 months away, would make some people, especially young people, feel like voting is useless. However, I believe that voting and protest have to go hand in hand. And anyone who tells you to do one and not the other is oversimplifying, and they don't have your best interests at heart. Protesters have accomplished a remarkable amount in the past 3 weeks. We got Breonna's law passed in Kentucky. We got all 4 of George Floyd's killers charged. We're just getting started. Protesting works. Protesting works, but I truly believe that we have to follow it up at the voting booth. And when I talk about the importance of voting, I don't just mean voting for president. It's the local elections and ballot measures that have more of an impact on our everyday lives. It's the city and county commissioners who are responsible for holding police officers accountable. Police budgets are set by local government. So if you think that the police have too much money or too little money, you need to go let your local officials know. You need to blow up their phone lines. You need to tell them that if you are not doing the things that we, the constituents, that we, the people, put you in office to do, then we're going to vote you out. Let them know. It's our civic duty to research these races, some of which are coming up in August. We have to start putting in the work now, so we can be proactive in preventing these acts of police brutality that we've seen in other cities. We have the power to create the kind of communities that we want to live in. We just have to use it. Now, this past Tuesday, 5 states held primary elections. In Nevada, the last voter left their polling location at 3 a.m., more than 8 hours after the polls were supposed to close. In Georgia, the cops were called on Black voters who stayed in line until midnight just trying to cast their votes. That's blatant voter suppression. That is wrong. A country that claims that all citizens have the right to vote, but systematically deprives poor citizens of that right because of a prior felony conviction, or constructs barriers that effectively shut out Black and brown people, will not be able to call itself a democracy for much longer. Amendment 4? You guys know what I'm talking about? In 2018, 65% of Floridians voted to restore voting rights to people who had previously been in prison. Before that amendment got passed, research showed that 20% of Black Floridians were disenfranchised. Amendment 4 got more votes than either candidate for governor in 2018 and should have restored the right to vote to 1.4 million people. That's the populations of South Dakota and Vermont combined. But instead, what we got was more disenfranchisement. The requirement that formerly incarcerated people pay back their fines created a system where rich people with felonies could buy back their right to vote, but poorer and blacker and browner people could not. Is that the kind of country you want to live in? No. That's not what I want. Now, all right, I have a confession to make. I'm not just here as a local Black woman. I'm also here on behalf of a campaign. That is the Deborah Poulalion for Seminole Supervisor of Elections campaign. Now, Deb is not just any ordinary candidate. She has a real vision for bringing this country together at the voting booth. And it was that vision that led me to call her. I came across her website and I said, this woman is going to be a champion for voting rights. And I reached out and I said, please let me work on your campaign. Now let me tell you about Deb's vision for our county and how she's going to help take us forward. She has 4 main priorities that are going to improve how elections are run here. And she's going to bring in more voices into the electoral process. We want a country that represents and values all of us, right? Yes. So we need more of us to vote, right? Yes. Okay, so here we go. Step 1, access to voting. Right now, Seminole County only provides the minimum amount of early voting hours. What Deb wants to do is to expand those hours. And that's so important now during a pandemic. We don't need to see people standing all up close to each other in those long lines like we saw in Georgia and Nevada. The more people that early vote, the safer we'll all be. And election day, we won't have those large crowds that will spread coronavirus in our populations, especially to the most vulnerable of us, the Black and the brown and the poor people. As Supervisor of Elections, she will also stop the disenfranchisement of older Black voters by bringing back souls to the polls. And, of course, she supports the full and equitable implementation of Amendment 4. Can y'all get behind that? Does that sound good? Priority number 2, clear communication. We know that at least 22% of Seminole County residents are Latino. Right now, when you call the Supervisor of Elections office, you have to wait 30 seconds just to hear an option to get instructions in Spanish, and those instructions just tell you to go to the website that isn't even fully translated. That's voter disenfranchisement, and it's unacceptable. Let me put it clearly for our Latino neighbors. Los hispanohablantes merecen ser tratados como miembros valorados de nuestra comunidad. Y por eso hay que proveer esta información importante en español. Es así de sencillo. We need to treat Latinos in this community like they belong. And that includes access in the language they need to the information they need. Priority number 3, election security. Now, we've heard a lot about voter fraud, and while it's statistically unlikely, it can still occur. But what Deb is going to do is that she's going to bring in her background as a data analyst and help us strike the balance between keeping the voter rolls clean and protecting ballot access for eligible voters. And she's also going to take advantage of federal resources to protect us from foreign interference so that what the Russians tried to do to us in 2016 and 2018 doesn't happen again. Is that the kind of democracy you want to live in? A sovereign one where all of our voices matter and outsiders can't try to tear us apart? Because that's what I want. And finally, Deb will make sure that taxpayer funds are spent in ways that actually benefit voters, like providing prepaid postage for vote by mail, like Orange County and Osceola County already do. It just makes sense. So, what can we do today and next week to make this better world, to start working towards this better world for all of us? The little steps. We're going to keep protesting. We're going to keep marching. We're not going home. This moment feels different, all right? So like I said, we're going to merge protesting and we're going to merge our civic engagement at the voting booth. Now, the deadline to register or update your voter registration for the August 18th primary is July 20th. So if you need help with that, we've got you covered. We've got some friendly volunteers at this tent right over here who can help you update your voter registration. If you've just gotten married and need to change your name, go update your registration. If you've just gotten divorced, update your registration. If you want to change your party affiliation, we can help you with that. Now remember that Florida is a closed primary state. It's great to be an independent voter. You know, we can't just vote along party lines, that's fine. But in Florida, if you're not registered with a specific party, you can't vote in August. You're not going to have a say in who shows up on the ballot in November. So come see us, we'll help you out. We also have people walking around with portable clipboards for those of you who can't make it to the tent. Now, if you want time to research candidates before voting, consider registering to vote by mail. It's safe and easy, especially in a pandemic, and we can help you with that too. To all the teenagers here, if you are 16 in the age of Florida, you can pre-register to vote. Don't let it slip your mind. This is so important. Don't wait until you're 18 and, oh, you're too busy buying lotto tickets and buying cigarettes. This is way more important, all right? So if you're 16 or 17 and you want to pre-register to vote, we can help you with that. The Supervisor of Elections will mail you your voter registration card on your 18th birthday, and then you'll be ready to join us in having a say in how this country is run. If you want to learn more about Amendment 4, join the Deborah Poulalion campaign this Tuesday at 7 p.m. We're having a Zoom call with representatives from the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. And we're going to talk about how Amendment 4 and how the court's rulings will impact this upcoming election and will re-enfranchise those who had their right taken away. And if you just want to learn more about Deb or get involved with the campaign, go to debforelections.com. She has all the voting deadlines. She has her list of priorities. We're working on getting the website translated into Spanish so we can practice what we preach about equitable access. Now, to wrap it up and go back to the big picture, it's not enough to vote for politicians who say the right things. We also have to hold them accountable. And we're doing that here by marching. We're going to do it in August and November by voting. As the great American writer and gay black icon James Baldwin once said, "I love America more than any other country in the world, and exactly for this reason, I insist on the right to criticize her perpetually." It's not patriotic to insist that one's country is perfect when all evidence says otherwise. It is an act of patriotism to expect more of one's country and of one's representatives and hold it to a higher standard. When I look at this crowd, I see the best of America. I see people of different races and ages and genders, people from every walk of life, standing together and standing up for each other. And even what feels like a really dark hour, I feel more hopeful than I have in years. This fight isn't over yet, though. While we're standing up for all black lives, we also need to stand up for the babies locked in cages at the border, and the trans people whose very existence is being denied, and everyone whose rights are under attack. When they come for one of us, they will come for all